In my mind, I'm always the best.
I am the #1 most impactful artist of our generation.
I'm pushed to myself. I don't need other players to push myself.
I am Shakespeare in the flesh, Walt Disney.
Imagine waking up every day with the feeling that someone is watching you, not in a distant, fleeting way, but as if every glance, every whisper, every laugh is somehow connected to you. Now, imagine you're Cristiano Ronaldo, standing in front of thousands of screaming fans, and yet you can't shake the thought that people are plotting against you. This isn't just a fleeting insecurity, it's paranoia. Paranoia isn't just a feeling, it's a lens through which reality is warped and twisted. The world becomes a labyrinth, and every turn is filled with shadows. It starts as a seed, something small, seemingly innocent, but when it takes root, it grows into a towering force, casting everything around you in doubt. You start seeing patterns that aren't there, hearing whispers that don't exist, and feeling eyes upon you even when no one's around. It's not just about fearing someone's out to get you. Paranoia is about seeing hidden motives where there are none. It's about constructing an elaborate story in your mind, one where you're the protagonist, but also the target. This is how paranoia hijacks your thoughts. It turns normal, everyday interactions into a web of deceit, betrayal, and manipulation. At its core, paranoia is a persistent feeling of mistrust and suspicion, often without any solid evidence to justify it. People suffering from paranoia might feel that others are watching them, talking about them, or trying to hurt them, even when there's no real threat. This feeling of being persecuted or manipulated can be overwhelming, and it distorts the way the paranoid individual sees the world and interacts with others. In the grip of paranoia, the mind becomes a master of illusion. You might walk into a room full of people, and where others see laughter, you see mockery. A colleague might give you a compliment, but to your paranoid mind it feels insincere, like a veiled insult. These false realities can be so convincing that it becomes nearly impossible to separate them from the truth. The more your brain feeds on these assumptions, the more real they become. And the more you believe them, the more isolated you become. For example, consider a moment like walking into a room full of people at a party. To most, it's just a crowd. But for someone with paranoia, every whisper, every smile, feels like a deliberate action aimed at them. What are they saying about me? Are they laughing at me? These are the questions that plague the paranoid mind, turning an otherwise ordinary situation into a minefield of perceived threats. One of the most insidious effects of paranoia is how it seeps into relationships. What starts as a small crack in trust eventually erodes the foundation of friendship, family, and love. Those closest to you become suspects in your mind. A quiet text message from a friend might be interpreted as a betrayal. A partner's absence might be seen as proof of infidelity. Even small, insignificant actions can trigger intense feelings of suspicion. Consider Howard Hughes again. As his paranoia worsened, he withdrew from almost everyone. His friends, family, and even business associates became enemies in his eyes. He believed that people were trying to manipulate or harm him, and this fear drove him to isolate himself completely. His paranoia led to a breakdown of his personal connections, and the lonelier he became, the more paranoid he grew. This vicious cycle is all too common for those dealing with paranoia. The very people you need for support become the very ones you distrust. While life experiences and stress certainly contribute to paranoia, there's also a biological side to consider. Genetic factors play a role in predisposition to paranoid thoughts. Studies suggest that paranoia can run in families, indicating a hereditary component. For instance, individuals with a family history of schizophrenia or other mental health conditions are more likely to develop paranoia themselves. But it's not just genetics. Certain brain chemicals, particularly dopamine, play a major role in how paranoia develops. When dopamine levels are out of balance, the brain becomes hypersensitive to perceived threats. This neurochemical imbalance can lead to an exaggerated response to harmless stimuli, making a person prone to imagining threats where none exist. So, while the paranoid mind is often considered a product of life events, it's also rooted in biology, a delicate balance between the mind and the body's chemical processes. At the heart of paranoia is a distorted cognitive bias. The brain begins to overestimate the likelihood of threats and the intentions of others. It's as if the paranoid mind is hardwired to look for danger, even when none exists. One of the key cognitive distortions seen in paranoia is called jumping to conclusions. This happens when you take small pieces of information and magnify them, forming a conclusion that is completely detached from reality. Success can sometimes fuel paranoia as the stakes become higher and the pressure to maintain success becomes overwhelming. Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, stands as one of the greatest footballers to ever play the game. Yet, behind his talent lies a mind constantly fighting against feelings of failure. His paranoia about not being good enough pushes him to train relentlessly to stay ahead of the pack. But the cost of that drive is high. His paranoia often isolates him, making it difficult to form meaningful relationships or feel at ease with his own success. Ronaldo isn't alone. For many high achievers, the fear of failure isn't just a motivator, it's a constant companion. The fear that someone is out to take away everything they've worked for can make them distrust even the most loyal allies. This fear of losing everything can become a prison, preventing them from enjoying the fruits of their success. In the public eye, paranoia is often masked by the celebrity's persona. Kanye West, for example, has faced public scrutiny for his behavior, which many attribute to his mental health struggles. His paranoia manifests in his constant battles with the media, his need to defend himself against perceived slights, and his fear of being misunderstood. But what many don't see is that these outbursts are often an expression of deeper internal battles with paranoia. In his case, paranoia has led to periods of extreme isolation, but it has also fueled his creativity. West's fear of being silenced, of having his voice and ideas taken from him, has driven him to break boundaries in music and fashion. His public confrontations, while controversial, are often fueled by a belief that he is being misunderstood or manipulated. While his paranoia has at times caused personal turmoil, it has also pushed him to create some of the most iconic moments in modern music history. Paranoia doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's influenced by the world around us. In today's society, with constant media bombardment, social media pressures, and the spread of sensationalized news, paranoia is often fueled by external sources. The constant exposure to scandalous stories, rumors, and conspiracy theories creates an environment where suspicion thrives. On platforms like social media, everyone is watching, judging, and comparing themselves to others. This can lead to heightened insecurity and suspicion. People begin to feel as if they are constantly under scrutiny, which feeds into the paranoia cycle. In a sense, social media is like an amplifier for our fears. By presenting highly curated and filtered versions of others' lives, it makes us feel that we are constantly being compared, judged, and sometimes even attacked. Living with paranoia is not about eradicating it completely, it's about managing it. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, has shown significant promise in helping people confront their paranoid thoughts and replace them with healthier patterns of thinking. But therapy alone isn't enough. Meditation, mindfulness, and a supportive network can provide the grounding needed to fight off paranoia's grip. For those struggling with severe paranoia, medication can help. Antipsychotics, antidepressants, and anti-anxiety medications work to regulate the brain chemistry, providing relief from the overwhelming thoughts and fears. But even with medication, the journey isn't over. Paranoia doesn't just disappear, it can be managed, understood, and even used as a tool for growth. The most important step, however, is building a network of support, whether through friends, family, or support groups. Isolation feeds paranoia. Connection, on the other hand, can weaken its hold. By opening up, sharing fears, and confronting them together, we can help rebuild a sense of trust in reality. Paranoia is a complex, multifaceted condition. It can destroy lives, but it can also shape them. It can make a person feel like the world is against them, but it can also give them the drive to conquer it. By understanding paranoia, recognizing its signs, and learning how to manage it, we can turn it from a source of fear into a source of strength. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the complexities of the human experience.